Great careers are not accidents, they're journeys built through clarity and intent. In every industry, there are such journeys that reveal true leadership, sacrifice, risk, and purpose. I'm Dirk Horn, and this is The Pitch and the Catch, where we dive into choices, changes, and the careers they create. Welcome. Today's guest has spent her career leading in environments where the stakes were real and the margin for error was small. Dr. Traci Eisenberg-Rayburn served as a U.S. Army officer, including during one of the most consequential periods in recent history. Today, she is the founder and CEO of E&R Business Consulting, where she helps organizations and leaders navigate change, build resilience, and lead effectively under pressure through her battle-tested leadership framework. She's also the host of the Got Your Six podcast, where she explores leadership, service, resilience, and the lessons that help people thrive in both business and life. Drawing from experiences that span the battlefield, the boardroom, and the coaching room, Traci brings a perspective on leadership that is grounded in action, accountability, and human connection. Traci, welcome to The Pitch and the Catch.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here. Yes, that was a great introduction, by the way. I think
Ah,
you hit every bit of it. You hit all the little things that need to be said.
thank you very much. That all goes to my team. The praise. Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, it is wonderful to have you, and I'm happy we finally managed to get in the same room. We've been
Yes,
playing a little bit ping pong back and forth with trying to arrange this. I'm really excited.
yes,
Traci,
me too.
you've led in both military and business environments, and looking back on the journey, what were the, let's say, experiences that most shaped your leadership philosophy? And also, because we've just talked about families, and also how has that definition of leadership for you evolved over time?
Although, you know what? That's two really great
I
questions.
know it's
So,
I'm sorry, it's actually two
no.
starting questions.
Oh, no, I can blend them. No, it's beautiful. The thing that's funny is, especially being in the military, looking at leadership is very different than getting a job and working wherever, right? Because you rely on people's guidance, especially as a young officer and things like that. I was an officer in the military. So, the thing that really hit me though was the bad leaders I had. I know that's so
Oh,
it was all the bad leaders. I used to say to my husband when I joined the army, when you first join the military, you only have to serve for like 4 years, right? That's like the mandatory when you sign the contract.
yes,
I kept saying to him, if I have to be that kind of person to be the next rank, I don't want to stay in. Then I'd get promoted and I'd say, if I have to be like that when I'm a captain, I don't want to stay in. And finally, I had this senior officer over me and I was talking to him. He was a great person. Was talking to him one day and he said, the funny thing you're missing is you can be any kind of leader you want to be. You don't have to be like them. You don't have to be a bully. You don't have to. So fortunately, working for him, young as a young captain, not young in age, but young in rank. But working for him, it made me realize watching him and emulating some of the things he was doing is I really could become the leader I wanted to be. And I am a very compassionate person. And we were going to war multiple times over and over. And in my mind, I didn't care what the junior ranks were. That was a big misconception, rather, with officers in the military, is that, you're an officer and they're enlisted, but we're going to war. I'm going to need them to like me. Yeah. Like I'm going
yes,
to need them to want to save my life if necessary. Right. And so
yes,
I really
yes,
kind of looked at it that way. Plus, also, my husband was not an officer. He was also in the army. My brother was not. Nobody else in my family. They were all long lineage all the way to the Revolutionary War. None of them were officers. Um, I just decided to be an officer because I wanted to have a voice in the military, right?
yes.
And so when I would look at my soldiers, I would see my family members, right? And so I just made this decision. I'd be any kind of officer I wanted to be, any kind of leader I wanted to be, and I chose to be a compassionate one. And in retrospect to that, in looking at my leadership even during my military service, and then retiring and joining and working for the government for 5 years before I started my own business, even that formed it even more because it made me realize why are there such bad leaders, right? And a lot of times in my mind, it wasn't that they were purposely bad. Okay, sometimes there are bad leaders, don't get me sometimes there's bad people everywhere, right? But in retrospect, a lot of times, and I'm sure you've this can resonate with you, with the people you work with, is they just don't have the proper training, or they don't have the proper leadership skills, or they don't, a lot of times people are like, oh, you're really good at finishing projects. Let's make you a manager. Wait, but what they've never managed people or things, right?
Yes.
And yeah, and then they get thrown in these positions where they haven't received the proper training. They have not been given the proper tools. So the biggest thing that I received, like going through the many, many years of being in the military, was that you can be any kind of leader you want to be if you want it bad enough. But it does combine with the care and effort of being that kind of leader. Hopefully I
Is
answered that the way you
no, I know. No, this is
Yeah,
I love this. So
yeah,
I read a quote. I don't know where that says the most sophisticated organization that was ever created by humans is the U.S. military,
yes,
and that
I
was
agree.
not by a military buff or someone who was fascinated about military. That was by an organizational expert. And
Yes,
of course, the question naturally arises, and I think it is a highly sophisticated organization. How can you be the leader that you want to be if the organization is sophisticated? Because when my space is of course, the civilian space, you cannot be the leader that you want to be in that space. You have to adhere to corporate values and whoever they want you to be. So maybe specify that a little bit. I think it's an interesting point. Be the leader that you want to be, but you still have to be in the framework of
right.
the military, correct?
Well, there's guidelines everywhere, right?
Yes.
In business and in corporate
Agreed.
America and the military, there's guidelines. In the military, they call them regulations, right?
Uh-huh.
But the thing is the regulation and the guideline doesn't make you the human being you are, right? And that's what you have to realize. And any of your listeners that are hearing this is when I'm saying be the leader that you want to be, obviously follow guidelines. When I was in the army, I followed regulations. I follow rules to the law. I don't believe in breaking rules. I am a rule follower. But the thing is, as a leader, as a compassionate human being, as somebody that looks out for other people, you can follow those guidelines and still be the leader you want to be. Follow the guidelines, right? Make sure people are doing what they're doing. Make sure people are training like they're supposed to. Make sure people are wearing the right uniform, wearing the right clothing,
Yes.
following the right processes, following the right systemology. But the thing is, you don't have to be mean, rude, and nasty to do it. And that's where I'm talking about when I'm talking about bad leaders, because a lot of times when leaders are put in positions that they're not trained for, just because you've been working for a company for 20 years doesn't mean you've been trained to be a manager, a senior leader, right? But so just because you're in those positions doesn't mean that you have to treat people poorly. And that's the trick, okay? The trick is, and the thing is behind it, in leadership, people will follow you if you're a good person, right? They will follow the rules, they will follow the systemology, they will follow anything that you put into place if you treat them like a human being. The problem is we get people in these positions that don't normally work with humans, and then they're put in a position where they have 20, 30 people under them, or even in the military, 400 people under them, and all they know how to do is be aggressive because that gets answers, right? If you're aggressive and you yell at people, they're going to listen. It happens a lot in the military, but you know what? I saw it in the government very often after I retired. And you can have structure without cruelty. You can have structure without any of that. People are tend to follow you more and listen to your leadership if you treat them with kindness.
Um, yes, I agree 100%. So no one gets up in the morning and says, "Today I want to screw up." At least I've never met such a person. And if we, especially on the leadership side, if we see behaviors that we feel like are out of the executive spectrum, like being aggressive, um, and I think personally it comes from a lack of confidence and a lack of skill rather than a lack of motivation. So I think
Right.
someone
Yeah.
being aggressive, I mean, probably they didn't start that position being aggressive. It's something they developed over time because of the lack thereof, the lack of other ways to get to the goal. I mean, there might be someone who's, a bit unhinged, maybe, let's say it like this. But typically, I think even in the military, these are filtered out.
Yeah.
If we see those behaviors, I would at least assume that.
I would love to say that that's true in the military, but, and even in the government, I feel like when you have a person that understands how to make the money or how to make the mark on the company when it comes to the military, how to win wars, right? How to get to the from one mission to the next, some things are overlooked. And a lot of times it tends to be how the people are treated below them.
Yes,
And, and I mean, I understand in retrospect, you know, missions have to happen. No, whether you're in a civilian company or you're in the military
yes,
or the government,
agreed.
missions
Yes,
have to happen, right?
yes,
But in the biggest picture of it, I do agree with what you're saying. Okay, I do want to say I do agree with what you're saying. But I think some of the missing piece also is even in civilian worlds and in the military, people are not trained how to manage. It's just not something that happens generally in a general sense, right? Most times people are put in positions, you're great, whatever. Let's give you a raise. We're going to give you
yes,
we're going to make you a project manager. You know nothing about projects, but we're going to make you a project manager and then we'll send you to training. But by the way, now all of a sudden you're in charge of 20 people and you have to make this giant, like I used to do data center builds, $1 billion data center builds. I was in charge of 5 project managers, 20 to 30 people under each one of them. Like, here you are. You're magically I retired from the army and I was given this position. I never went through formal project management or program management training, but I was good at what I did in the military, and thank God I knew how to treat people, so people listened. But the thing is most times people are put in these positions and they're not trained. Training there's a lot of it that goes into that, right?
and I mean, the typical. I always describe it. The typical career progression is like you start as in our 20s, we know nothing. Which is basically onboarded. We get stronger with content and all of this. And if we're in the sweet spot, we deliver on projects, missions, projects. And then if we deliver in a good, meaningful way with good results, we're being promoted. So it's always the individual results that
Yeah.
lets companies or
Yep.
organizations promote us. And then the issue is you're promoted for a skill that has less of a relevance once you're a leader or manager. Because if as a leader you try to make things happen, that's a completely different approach as opposed to an individual contributor.
That's
And I
true.
think
That's absolutely
that's
true.
the thing is you're promoted for completely different things into
Yes.
positions that has
Yeah.
nothing to do with this.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah. I
I've
agree.
that is a couple of years back. I think I even made like a single podcast about it. I did research around natural born leaders. Um, and you see my smile already. I don't
Yeah.
believe in natural born leaders. I believe
Okay.
in trained leaders.
Okay.
Um, some people have maybe a few things are come more natural to them.
Yeah.
So, for
Yeah.
example, if you have the connecting piece, if your family gave you that, your education, your upbringing gave you that connection piece and the value of the human connection, you have that. That's maybe you have a better starting point. But in principle, I always felt that we can, leaders are made, not born.
I
Um,
I
I
I I would not have said that way in the past, but because you said it the way you did, I will agree with you. I do say that there are people that are meant to be leaders. I guess I say it that way,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
I wouldn't disagree. Yeah.
Yeah, they're meant to be leaders, but you're absolutely right. They're born with certain skills that develop over time, and then they become better at whatever the task is that they're doing, right? But I think that a lot of the problem comes in when clarity is involved, right? Clarity tends to be the biggest issue when I work with any business owner or even senior managers, right? Is because they try to read the books, they try to listen to podcasts now, they take the
Yeah.
courses, they hire coaches, but yet they remain stuck. right? And they're trying. So it correlates exactly with what you're saying. Like they're trying to do all the things. Even people that get out of the military, senior, not just officers, you have enlisted ranks, which are sometimes senior enlisted, they get out and, people have this impression that they've led soldiers to battle, right? But they still go out of it knowing they need more. I did the same thing. Like I got this job right out the gate. I was like, okay, I'm a program manager. I have no formal training. I made the choice. I went back to school. I went and got a master's degree in project management because I was like, I need to understand this because I can manage humans, but I need to know what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But,
And
but yeah, that's what it really comes down to. I think like I would agree. I wouldn't have said it that way, but I do appreciate how you said that. Like they're not necessarily born, but I think they're born to lead. There are certain people that are just, I think
yeah,
I'm one of
yeah,
them. Like I just have natural abilities, like you're saying, but I had to go the extra mile, right? I had to take the time to figure that out, right? I mean, I wrote a book about leadership because there are people that are put in positions of leadership in my top 5 favorite leadership styles. Well, one of them is not my absolute favorite, but the 5th one in my book is laissez-faire leaders, which are very laid back leaders, right? They drive me crazy, first of all, drive me crazy, and not for bad reasons, okay? They drive me crazy because they're so laid back, right?
mm,
And they wait for their employee, I almost said their soldiers, even their soldiers, right? They wait for somebody to tell them how they think they wanna do something, and then they get frustrated that the things
yeah.
are not going the way they want them to. That's the only reason it drives me crazy because 'cause I'm like, "Wait a minute, either you wanna be in charge, you wanna take the next step." But the thing with laissez-faire leaders that I equally love, I have to say this, is that they are laid back. They listen to the people around them, right? The other extreme is autocratic leaders, which are very aggressive leaders. They don't. They make missions happen, right? General Patton is a like notorious autocratic leader. He just makes missions happen, right?
Yes.
Um, without listening to anybody around him, which wasn't always great because people died. But the thing is that there's such a big spectrum of leadership and what qualities people have and what they take with them from the things that they are learning, but it does definitely take you have to take the time to get to the next level when you really wanna do that. I mean, a lot of that came out of my military, that shaped this skill for me, obviously, right? I mean, it was in my young 20s when I joined the Army, and even bringing it into parenthood, I hope you don't mind me saying that, but bringing it into parenthood actually wakened me in a different way even because my children were I made a decision to not join the army until after they were, a little bit older because I wanted to be with them when they were very young,
Yes.
and, the nice thing behind that was they were at an age where I could speak to them and have them understand what was happening, understand why I was doing what I was doing. My husband was also in the military, as I've mentioned, but, it was very different when it came to shifting that leadership style from because by the way, even though I was firm but kind when I was in the army, I was very much an autocratic leader. I was blended though because I did listen to my soldiers. I listened to the scenarios that happen around me, but I had to learn how to take that uniform off and leave it at work and not carry it home. Because that was a very hard thing, especially during wartime. You're at work and it's all aggressive. Everything you're doing it has to do with missions, has to do with planning, has to do with everything. And then I'd go home and there'd be toys all over the floor. I'm very OCD, so toys all over the floor, and I'd get very frustrated very quickly. And I've told this story before. It wasn't until my mom moved in with us to be helpful with the kids at some point, and it wasn't until she pulled me off to the side and was like, I said, "Where is everybody?" She said, "They're scared of you." That's what she
Whoa.
said. She said, "They're scared of you."
That's a strong
And
feedback.
yeah, especially for my mom, we were very, very close, so for her to say that to me, it made me reflect. Fortunately, I've also have a psychology degree, so I reflected on it, and I made a decision the next day to never wear my uniform home again. And so that's how as a leader, I'd made that decision that I needed to leave that uniform at home and put on civilian clothes, so during that drive home, I could become mom, and shift that so I was not, Captain Rayburn, Major Rayburn anymore. I was mom when I'd walk through that door or wife or daughter for that matter, right? So understanding in that leadership even at home, I needed to make a shift.
Isn't that also an experience that further develop your leadership skills?
Yeah, absolutely.
That
That's
that
why I brought it
that
up. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
that's a strong experience
Yeah,
actually. That
yeah,
hits home. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it really is. And the thing, you know, I always joke with people that say they can't speak in front of groups, which is hilarious because the way I became such a good orator is the proper word for it, right? But the way I became such a good speaker was I was a Girl Scout leader for 6 years, 7 years. I don't know. It was a long time. It felt like forever, right? But speaking in front of moms, it's the hardest people to speak to. But the
Oh my
thing
God.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, because they troubleshoot everything you say, right? But the thing was in that is I really had to learn how to take that leadership at work, like being in the army and shift it, talk about downgrading leadership, but lifting it back up to be a leader in this Girl Scout scenario, right? And because then you're teaching these little girls how to do things that they're gonna have to do as an adult and things like that, but yeah, framing that leadership in my I always say all the hats I wore. When I was in the army, I wore many hats, right? But the thing is how are you gonna shape that leadership, right? And it all does stem from my background in the military actually, because prior to that, I was a very different person, which did cause a bit of conflict when I retired of who do I
Yeah.
wanna be now? Like, who am I gonna be now, right? But
There's I did I have a fun story, and I want to get to two more things.
yeah,
Just let me have
yeah,
that. So I want to
yeah,
go to the five leadership types that you described in your book,
yeah.
and you and I are on a mission today, which I didn't do in the opening. We
Oh,
wanted to
that
discuss how I can
yeah,
change someone's life in 20 minutes. Not
yeah.
I don't. So I still remember this. But here's something because you're the perfect person where I can bring that story. It's a true story, and let's see if it takes us somewhere. So there's a See, I'm German originally. The the head of the German forces before World War II, so before Adolf and everything happened, there was like a not political trained soldier, and he basically said in a non-polemic way, and he looked at his entire army and he said, um, "I see there's four sets of criteria, and you can combine them to four different types of people." He said there's simple minds and smart people, and there is lazy and diligent people. And now you need to combine those two. And he looks at his army. He had literally said this. It's 100 years ago, but he said you have simple people and lazy. This is 70% of your force. Simple and lazy. They need clear instructions. They need a structure, order, process, everything. So this then you have the other side. You have diligent and smart. So these are your strategic planners. You have like, a few of them. These are the people you put into your staff. These are the ones that create the systems, that create the
Yep,
logistic and everything. Then he said,
yeah,
there's the most dangerous group. These are diligent, but they're simple. They're a little bit, this is the ones you have to take care of because they are very busy, but they basically cause damage. You just look away, cause damage. And then he said, and then in the last group, you have lazy and smart. And he said, these are your leaders. The- the-
yeah,
This
yeah.
this is how, and it's 100 years ago. This is like a deep look into the past. I always found it both amusing and insightful.
It's actually such an interesting I mean, it correlates completely with the 2 ends of the spectrum that I do many times talk about I talk about it in my book, but that I talk about very often in the work that I do with people because the funny thing is, you know, you have, again, the autocratic leader, like you said, the people that are making designs, but then you have lazy, laissez-faire leaders, that's why they drive me crazy. I mean, I wouldn't use the word lazy so much, but it is very true. All of that is all very true because the thing is there, but I'm sorry, there's pieces in between that I feel there are. The Democratic leader, which is the person that I feel like I am more now that I've evolved after being out of the military for 9 years. You know, that's the person that has the ability to be strategic, but yet also has the ability to be compassionate, right? But that took many years of my life to get there, right? Because I wasn't that way when I was in the army. Now, I did listen to reason very often when I was in the even though I was very much I would never say I was like General Patton, but I was very much an autocratic leader. I understood the mission. I was able to make a strategic plan. I was able to understand the next steps, and I did listen to the advice of the people around me, but if it did not put in my mind a rate of success, I didn't waver from my own plan. And that's just the way I was. I mean, thank God I was very successful in all the missions I was on when I was at war and things like that. But the problem is because, again, you have these people in the military that are laissez faire, and then they want to, they don't understand the outcome of their behavior, right? And that's anywhere. Laissez faire leaders are like that. And I don't want to call them lazy, but the outcome of their behavior can really be detrimental to life, to a business, to a corporation, to anything. And that's the hard part of the two ends of the spectrum. There are people in between, but it is far and few between. The majority is one end of the spectrum or the other. That's why I had to laugh when you explained it that way. I mean, that was probably 100 years ago that that person came up with that revelation,
Yes,
right?
100 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see, we like to build complicated and sophisticated systems, and sometimes I just enjoy simplicity, going back to very basic concepts. I know see, the thing is, this doesn't tell you the whole story, but there's a truth in there. I have 29 years as an employee and as a consultant in corporations. Let's not use the word lazy. There's a
Yeah.
laissez-faire,
Yeah.
there's a component which I'm lacking the right word at the moment. 67% of your workforce, they want to come in, they work to live. They just want to have a decent job, want to be decently treated. They don't want to work the super long hours. They just want it as one part of their lives. Yeah, if we take all the judgment out of it, and that is fine. So that's the 70% that he described. So there's a truth to this. There's also a truth. There's always on top, there's sort of the cream of people that have extra amounts of intelligence. I'm always fascinated by those people. Those are the people where you do not have to explain things twice. I think this is,
I love those
yeah,
people.
yeah. So but here's the thing. You want them to do the smart stuff. That is
Yeah.
very important because
Yep.
building systems, and I think you would agree, building systems is complicated. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, so that is, and the laziness or laissez-faire, the laziness aspect of the leader. If you have a diligent leader, and diligence is, I love diligence, but here's the thing, leaders cannot change the outcomes themselves. They need to work through others. And
Yeah,
this
that's
is where I'm
true.
thinking, if we said lazy or laissez-faire, laissez-faire means I don't care, basically. It's like whatever happens, laissez-faire. So if you are a little bit lazy as a leader, gives you a good predisposition to allow your people to do the work. And shouldn't this not be a leader's task to allow the people to do the work?
Absolutely true. That's where my problem is with some leaders because they speak a big game, right? And they say they want their soldiers or their employees to be able to have a thought, right? Be able to plan,
Yes,
be able to do the things. But then let's bring in this, my favorite word is micromanage, right? They micromanage and they don't allow the people under them to evolve. But then the problem is they become the bottleneck. Whether you're talking about
yes,
the military, the government, or a civilian sector, they become the bottleneck because they're micromanaging, because they don't have trust in the people that are below them,
yes,
right? And
yes.
that's a big problem. Trust is huge. I talk to business owners all the time and I'll talk to them about trust. They'll say, I don't have trust problems. And I'm like, okay, let's dig into this. Let's dig into this for a minute about why you are the bottleneck. Because they'll even recognize sometimes that they're the bottleneck. They understand they're the one slowing the work down, right? But then they're not seeing beyond that. So that's pretty funny. Yeah.
I just had the idea, Tracy. Let's, um, a client of mine, leader, he sent me a note yesterday. He wants and now comes the 20 minutes idea, his team
Yeah.
to the next level. And let's talk about this as experts because I was fascinated.
Okay.
So I read this last night and I just had the idea to bring it up. So he says, send me a Word document and I'll forward this podcast to him. He'll love that. It says, I'm reading from it, winning without me.
I love
So
that.
how do I get, so
Yes.
this is a kind of cool thing.
Yeah.
I had to process this. So I sent him like a note, like, this is amazing thoughts. I need to process this. Or here. And then there's a lot of text and he says, Here's the problem. The teams run on our established processes. It runs well. And then he goes, but I am still the power plant. I supply the belief by telling them what they built is exceptional. I supply the energy by pushing. I supply the standards by reviewing. I supply the improvement agenda by initiating. And then he concludes, take me out of the room and the trajectory flattens.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
I think this is a very common question in leaders' heads because they're
it is.
driving agenda. And
Yeah.
the moment they leave the room, so what is our message to him? It's a guy. What's our message
I
to him?
I love that. Okay, so these are my favorite clients, first of all, because I love to hear their story, first of all, because a lot of times it's because it happened, all of it happened because they had a plan and they wanted to see it come to fruition, right? So it's no
Yes.
insult to them, right? But the problem is that they stay the bottleneck and then they're like, wait, I want free time or I want time to work in the business or on the business, not in the business, right? That's everybody's favorite expression. But the thing is
Yes.
when you step back and you recognize you're the bottleneck, now you want to do something about it. Now you have to do something about it, right? So what is the first thing you have to do, right? But they get stuck. They're like, I can't be my favorite expression is you can no longer be the beacon of everybody's happiness, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, everything fails. So how do you, Dirk, explain that to him? And what I would say easily is you have to walk into it with thought-provoking questions to ignite his thinking. This is exactly what I do. So anytime, and when I say I can fix most people's start fixing their problems. And you can't fix the world's problems in 20 minutes, but you can start fixing the problems in 20 minutes because you already walk into that 20 minutes with thought-provoking questions. So you already know what his issue is, right? So you walk into the scenario with thought-provoking questions. People often ask me how I create such significant breakthroughs in such a
Yes.
short amount of time, but the truth is I don't change someone's life in 20 minutes, they do. Okay. And that's what you have to remember. And he has to remember, right? You're walking into it with him being the thinker, because he already is, obviously, if he's done all of
Oh,
this, right?
oh my God. This guy.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. So he's obviously already the thinker. You have to be the person to give that trajectory. So what I do to help people to uncover or help them uncover what they've been unable to see is that I dig into it with a question. I'm not going to tell you my secret question yet, but most people already know what they need to do, right? They already know what they need to do, right? They're just buried under fear most times, right?
Okay.
And excuses because it comes along with trust, right? They have a limiting belief to know that if they do step away, how is that going to happen? So you have to challenge
Yes.
them with asking the right questions. You have to challenge them with asking the right questions because they're already in the mud. I always say they're already in the mud. They can't get out of the mud. They were in the quicksand, but they've created the situation where they already know I shifted from quicksand to mud because they're recognizing they need to get out of the mud to be able to either work outside of the or have, plan ability to plan or do different things. And being that I spent 27 years of my life leading people through pressure, uncertainty, this is the exact time where you have to sit back and ask where the clarity is, right? You have to ask them what the clarity is that they want to see happen. They have to see that first. What do they want to see happen? So do they want to have one person in charge of everything that's happening? Because if they're going to step out of it, how is it going to happen?
Mhm.
Right? So I look at people through three lenses, right? First, where are they right this minute? Right this minute.
Yep.
Second, what what story are they telling themselves about why they're stuck? So he just said
Oh.
that, like he wants to get out of
Yep.
it, but why? Why is he stuck? Right? Because he thinks if he steps out of it, everything's going to flatline. But
Mhm.
why does he feel that way? He has to be the one to answer that, right? Because then that brings you to the next question. So the third question is, what is one decision, behavior, or belief creating the biggest bottleneck in his scenario? I'm giving you all the answers right now, Dirk. Somebody's got to help me out here.
I'm
You've got
just
to come
enjoying
back and let
this.
me know. You got to come back and let me know what happens with him, right? Because most people think they have a problem or they have 10 problems, and usually they have one creating 10 symptoms. I want to say that again because
Yeah,
the biggest thing is most people in that position, right? They see it like they have all these things. He even recognized that, right? He said he's got all these things. If he steps away from this will happen. If he steps away from, but it really is 10 symptoms with one problem. Once you identify the one thing, the conversation changes, the energy changes, the direction changes. That's why breakthroughs can happen so quickly when I'm on calls with people because I ask those simple questions. And we literally, sometimes, a lot of times, it has to do with time for senior man. I don't think that that's his problem. I mean, just me analyzing it. I don't think that's necessarily his problem, but a lot of times the problem people have is time. They don't understand how to manage their time well enough. So I teach them how to time bend. I mean, none of us are Doctor Strange. I don't know if you love Marvel or not, but
I do.
I teach them how to bend time a little bit and how to restructure the work they're doing. But I give, for concrete examples, I've had business owners that come to me convinced that they have a marketing problem, let's say, right? But it really is their leadership that's under them that's the problem. It's not necessarily marketing getting it out to the public. It's the leadership that's below them that isn't articulating what they do well enough. They don't understand the business owner's vision, let's say, right? They don't understand. They're talking to, let's say, they're marketing, they're doing all the things, but when they're talking to potential clients or something in this scenario that I'm thinking of, when they're talking to potential clients, the scenario is they don't understand the business owner's vision, so they're not articulating what they're going to the client what they're going to get out of it. You know what I mean? So in those
Yes.
questions that you're asking that person, and I got to know what happens. But when you're asking him, what is the one thing? Because it does come back every time, Dirk, you know this, it comes back to emotion. How does that person feel and why do they feel that way? Right? Now, very rarely do I bring feelings into business. In fact, I get mad when people do a lot of times because feelings don't belong in business. But when it comes to a senior leader or a business owner, feelings have to in this scenario because in order for them to step back and understand what those 10 symptoms are, they have to understand how they're the bottleneck. They have to understand, is it the managers that are below them that maybe they don't trust? Is it the people below them that they don't trust? Or maybe for my husband, the recent problem was his company didn't understand his vision. Now, he wasn't the example I just gave. He doesn't have a marketing problem. He's a digital marketing guy. I pray to God he doesn't have a marketing problem. But the problem was his employees didn't understand his vision. So when he was telling them he wanted them to create websites and do it in a certain way and have a certain standard as far as professionalism was concerned, they didn't understand because they didn't understand his vision, right? And so in understanding how to solve somebody's problem in 20 minutes, you have to have the right questions to ask. I just gave you all the answers, Dirk. You should be able to become a
Uh,
billionaire
th-
now. You
this
got all
this
the
is like
answers.
a this is like a training for me here. I
You got add this to all the great things you already do.
I like
You know,
this.
yeah, I mean, I think that my military background, leadership experience in that scenario, and my coaching experience, I hate the word coaching, but when you're talking to somebody in the way I do coaching, or I allow the person to dive in deep into their own mindset and understand. That's why I did a whole podcast on thought-provoking questions
Yeah,
because I love to ask people questions that make them think, right? Because you don't know how they're feeling. We can give structure, we can give strategy, I can give somebody strategy in 30 seconds on how their business should be redefined, right? But it's not going to help them in the long run because they're not going to trust the process, right? There
because it's
you can
yours and not
it's
theirs.
mine. Right. You can go into a company and you know this yourself. You give people advice on how they should restructure, but unless they understand it, they're not going to be able to do it. You're going to walk away from it and they're going to fail, right?
Yeah, and I think it's yes. I think it's one part is understanding, the other part is owning.
Owning it.
And especially when they
Absolutely.
got to this level, there's got to be, to some extent, it's got to be their solution. That element of ego is allowed, I think, and required
Absolutely.
in that position.
Yes. That's why thought-provoking questions are great. That's why you
Yeah,
go into it asking them that. Yeah.
so yeah. Now imagine you have this leader. You changed his or her life. with a couple of, or maybe with a couple of thought provoking questions. How
Yes.
can that leader
Yes.
learn to use that technology or that method in managing their team? Because that's what we ultimately want. We want them to be better leaders. So let's say we found that one question, we found the one bottleneck.
Right.
Um,
Uh,
so yeah,
no, go
no,
ahead.
then I'm just saying because we want them to become better as leaders. And if that method works that we apply on them as leaders, they should be able to use that exact same method to manage their teams.
I mean, it should be true, right? But the next step is, so I'm going to say this from a business owner or CEO or
Yes.
senior leader point of view that probably has managers under them, right?
Yes.
What I
Yes,
would say,
exactly.
no matter what they're taking from that thought-provoking question that you asked them, is they need to take that and implement it with those managers. Make them
Agreed.
go ask those managers the same question. Have them go sit down with their managers,
That's
their
what I'm
senior
saying.
level managers, not the task managers. Like, I'm talking senior, like the managers that are directly under them, even if it's only 1 or 2, sit down with them and now ask them the same question, because I guarantee they'll get different answers, right? But the problem is, as that senior business owner, CEO, senior level executive asking these managers, their answer should be the same. And that's probably where they're going to recognize a disconnect, right?
Yes.
They're going to
And
recognize a disconnect.
I'm asking
Yeah,
because typically the leaders that we work with are leaders who have leaders reporting into them. And
of
there's
course.
often a leadership level underneath.
Yeah,
And the question, no, let's say, yeah, let's call it a question. The question I get most from the top guys and maybe even the guys in the middle is how do I get that leadership cascade to work? Because I
that's
can
going to
do it
take more
with,
than that's going to take
yeah,
more than 20 minutes.
yeah, that's more than 20 minutes. That's,
You gotta stop. The 20 minutes is the top guy, right?
yeah,
Or top
that's
gal,
a,
right? But I mean, but
it-
the thing is, that's how it starts though, Dirk. Honestly, that's how it starts. It's the
yes,
trajectory of that leader
yes,
wanting more, right? But the only way you're gonna get more is to understand the symptoms, right? Understand the symptoms. The 20 minutes is where you're gonna get that symptom list, and then they can take that to, and if you're not gonna work with those managers, they can take it to those managers and have them ask the question. Don't, the thing I will say is, and if you're gonna tell this person this, as I give you all the answers, don't tell all the people the secrets, but it's what I tell my husband all the time. He'd probably kill me on this call right now. Telling all the secrets. Here's the thing. I would say if you're going to tell, like, you're going to sit down with this person, you're going to ask them this thought provoking question, right? You're going to ask them to get the symptoms, the 10 symptoms. Don't sit down with those other managers and tell them the symptoms.
yeah. But by the way,
Ask them the questions. Ask them the question.
yes. But by the way, Tracy, I think that the spilling of those secrets, that's an interesting aspect.
Yeah.
Just because you know it doesn't
Yeah,
mean you're
no.
able to apply
Oh,
it.
yeah, no. That's why I
And
was laughing about it. Yeah.
that's why I'm typically very generous with my
Oh,
knowledge.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, so holding back knowledge in this day and age, I'm sorry to use the word, it's just stupid.
It is.
Knowledge is a commodity.
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
It
I
is
was just joking. Yeah,
it's the application of said knowledge and how you
absolutely.
position it. And when this is where the magic
Yeah,
happens.
absolutely. But I do need to say though in this, and I'm glad if this helps that person, right? I will be so happy. That's why I said I gotta know how it turns out. But the thing is if he's going to go to his other senior managers, don't tell them what the symptoms are. Ask the questions of those
Yes,
managers, because then he can sit back, take it back and evaluate where the disconnect is, because I guarantee there's a disconnect. It might be a disconnect in them understanding his vision. It might be the
yes,
disconnect in understanding the company's vision, because an individual's vision and a company vision are a little bit different, as you know, right? But the thing is, what is the trickle down, right?
yeah,
Because the problem is if his senior managers, if they don't see those symptoms as the same as his symptoms, that means the managers below them don't see it and the managers below them don't see it, right? So just imagine the trajectory of that. And that's why he sees that it could probably flatline if he's not involved all the time.
yes. So
Yeah.
much to learn. I think I have to thank you for a good coaching session here.
Yeah, I'm here for you, Dirk, whatever you need. We can get on another call another time. I don't care about telling trade secrets because here's the thing. Exactly what you said is if I'm not sharing knowledge, that's why my podcast exists, right? Got Your
Yes,
Six, every single one of them, I'm telling secrets in some fashion or form. But the thing is, if I'm walking away from this and I haven't helped somebody in some way, what is the sense in doing it? Even coaching or speaking events. If I'm not helping somebody in some way, why am I doing it? Why?
I
Right?
agree. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
and also there's and see, I grew up in a lean management environment, and
Okay. Yeah.
we were trained into so Toyota is the big, maybe still they are, is the big showcase how lean management is being done. You and I could actually, if we had the context, just visit a Toyota site, even if we were competition, they would graciously, generously show us everything. Why? Because they know this is not easy implemented. This means whatever we see today takes years to implement. So while we're implementing, they're already on the next level.
Absolutely.
And I
Yep.
thought I thought that was very smart. In this way, Toyota got everyone on the Toyota production system. They basically created a whole philosophy in the engine in the manufacturing world with them being in the lead. That is very
Yes.
smart.
It is very smart. They are a great company.
They
Yeah.
are great. Yeah, yes. Hey, Tracy, last question, and this maybe more triggered out of my interest. Um, um, where's the cross learnings between the military and the civilian world today? So if you in this day and age, 2026, where in the military, I have really no clue what they could learn from us, but maybe limit on us. What happens in the military from your perspective that really could add value in the civilian world where we could learn? Because I think we could learn from each other.
Oh my gosh, I don't think anybody has asked me that question ever. So
Oh,
what we could
that's
learn
weird.
from the
This first question that
military.
seriously I had.
Yeah.
Was-
Honestly, I mean, this I'm not sure if this actually answers the question, but I use this as an example very often, is the military has been around since Spartans existed, right?
yes,
The structure of military in leadership, right?
yes.
Over time it has evolved, but what we have to remember as business owners, as senior leaders is civilian sectors come from business. Civilian business sectors, no matter what you are, come from military structure, right? Every unit in the military, from generals to young companies, young commanders, low level people, every section is run like a business, vice versa. But that's where business came from. The structure plan of leadership top down came from,
Organization, everything.
right, organizational
Even
leadership.
even the clothes we're wearing. I mean,
Yes,
you look
right.
at men's suits, the sleeves. It's all military.
Right. It's all a uniform,
Yes, all
I mean, that's
uniform.
why exactly. So, and when you think about structure, you have a leader, a senior manager, a general, a captain, like a commander, then you have a second person in charge, and then you have another, and then you have the people. But each section in the military, even at the lowest level, even has HR, has finance, has they call it quartermaster, like equipment things you need and things like that. It's built just like civilian structure, but what we don't realize as business owners is that that came from military structure. All of it came from military structure back in the day. That's how come so many business owners will read military books.
Yeah. And it starts with strategy, I'd say, von
Strategy.
Clausewitz,
Yeah.
and goes into organization. Correct me if I'm wrong, what I just learned from you is basically in the military, you replicate a fully functioning unit on every level. Like it is like a combination of, now let's do, in my world, small businesses,
Yeah.
functional units,
Yeah.
that basically act in a common framework of regulations and philosophy.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. There's a book, it's one of my favorite military books. It's called The Art of War, right? A lot of a lot of civilians will even read this book. It's by Sun Tzu.
Yeah,
It's
Sun Tzu.
as
Yeah, I've
old as
read.
dark a time, right? But the thing is, it has a lot to do with obviously battles, right? But if you dig into it, if you analyze the battles, if you analyze the military structure, if you analyze the strategy, you will be the best business owner there is out there. That is the piece that business owners are missing a lot of times. That's why I was so excited actually. Nobody's ever asked me the question. I offer the information sometimes, but I love and appreciate that you asked the question because the thing is, most businesses would grow leaps and bounds if they would take the time to read military structure and strategy books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that's not a good last word
Yeah.
to this amazing
Yes.
conversation,
Yeah.
um,
I love
well,
it.
what can I say? Typically I make a summary. So what I've learned a lot today, um,
Yeah,
which is um, we started with you can be any kind of leader that you want. In
absolutely.
terms of, and this is where where I made the asked the questions like, is this really like you can be what you want? And you said, no, yeah, we have to stick to the rules and regulations, but in between is where you become the leader that you need to be. I think
Absolutely.
that is
Yes.
what the first thing I've learned with this very interesting incident about natural born leaders, which I think is a cool conversation always.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
that conversation never goes away. And then let me see. And of course you coached me on my business case,
There you
which
go.
is
There you
which is
go.
very cool. No,
Yeah.
this I took away the idea of this guy um, using more the power and the art of no the art of powerful questions than
Yes.
trying to build more because he's built all the systems
Yeah.
and something's missing somewhere. No, this made me think. Hey, Tracy, thank you for joining us today and for
Yes.
sharing all those
Absolutely.
amazing experience and perspectives.
Yes. I loved it.
Of course,
Yes.
thanks for everyone for listening. This has been another episode of the Pitch and the Catch. I feel like we will see Tracy again here sometime
Yes.
because
I would
we
love it.
aren't
Yeah.
done yet. And we'll continue to explore the paths people take, the lessons they learned, and the impact they create. Well, Tracy, thank you very much. And everyone else,
Yes.
I'd say until next time.